Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series and episode 19 of BQ presented by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. Firstly, welcome back my co-host Pras, who is still on the road and has graciously joined us from a remote location. So Pras, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, much better than last week where I was working and trying to manage the jet lag and everything. Now I've been here on the East Coast for, I think, 10 days now. But now I'm on holiday, so it's a lot better. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. Your facial color and features look way different from the work week you had last week. So good to see you.
Indeed.
Good to see you back. And also we have another special guest in FPL, Zhou, who can be found on Twitter and is very popular within the community and making his second appearance on Burning Questions. So we're really happy to have you back. And he's on a free hit this week. So Zhou, how are you doing?
Busy but good. It's going to be an exciting week, especially for me since I'm on the free hit. But yeah, glad to be back, and thank you for inviting me back. I had a great time on the Burning Questions for the first time I've been here, and let's go.
Nice. So Pras is ready to roast you on your free hit team. So be prepared for that.
I'm not going to lie, that's true.
Okay, so awesome. So for today's topics, we have a very packed agenda, I think, because we're going to end up, as last time, keep talking, and we love FPL. And I think last time we had just under 2 hours, so we'll try to keep it shorter this time, hopefully. So the topics include just a review of this Gameweek 33 fixtures, best teams players doubling in 33 in isolation. We're going to answer many sort of meta and interesting questions within these topics, such as is a -4 worth it, and this and that. And then we'll talk about some single game week player options. We'll talk about free hit team examples presented by FplMode, Teach Mode, and FPL Teacher, both who are actual teachers in real life. So thank you for those two. And then we're going to roast free hit, FPL Zhou's free hit drafts. And then we'll do sort of a summary. Plus, we're going to talk about Bench Boost 33 dilemmas, and then we'll get to bus teams at the end. So it'll be a very fun, packed agenda today. First things first, this is the fixture ticker presented on Fantasy Football Scout on the website. So please do go check it out on the website. Quick plug here. What I did here was just look at Gameweek 33 in isolation, and then highlighted in yellow the teams doubling. So this is pretty straightforward that everybody knows about. Just something I enjoy is to just look at game weeks in isolation. So I created this based on home and away, not based on rank. So there's really no rank here or order here specifically. It's just kind of a nice color coordination for the viewers to see. And so, just off the right of the bat that everybody knows about is the double game week fixtures that stand out to me, at least, is the Newcastle 2 home games against relatively decent teams, but still, doable with the form that Newcastle is showing. United standout game versus Norwich at home. And we're going to present a very interesting angle on Norwich. At least Zhou and I talked about it prior to this episode. Followed by Liverpool. And so the interesting about United is a clear captaincy shout would be either Bruno or Cristiano Ronaldo because they double. And then there's also the Leicester 2 away games against Newcastle and Everton, but they have, I think, 3 games in 6 or 7 days, rotation risk, minutes, many risky factors when we talk about Leicester. Then we look at the single game week fixtures. Again, this is sorted by home and away. And so we have City home versus Brighton, amazing fixture. City need to win again to maintain the lead. Spurs home vs Brighton, I think another great fixture as they are now firmly in the lead for the top 4 spot. Liverpool versus Manchester United. Liverpool also need a win, must win to keep up in the race. And then we've got Chelsea versus Arsenal. Chelsea now officially out of the Champions League, by the way, brilliant game yesterday. So this is another very interesting assessment of how we're going to look at Chelsea moving forward, especially with them being out of the European competition. So quick landscape of the fixtures. I don't want to get too much into it because we have much more to talk about. Pras, anything you want to comment on these fixtures?
No, it's just I think you summarized it well. It's just one word of caution is just the doublers are the teams that are inconsistent, that are ones that you wouldn't back in your team more generally, and are the teams that don't have the best run-in. So this supports the idea of a free hit in a way where you're getting the doublers not for the long run, but just for this week. But it also adds the risk element to the free hit, which is you're backing teams, even though they're playing twice, you're backing teams that may do worse than other teams that only play once. So that's basically the summary of the week.
Okay, Zhou, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, being on a free hit, it's sort of like, I agree with Pras, because these players, some of these players are probably you only want to own them this week, and not owning them the week after this. Which is why free hit is appealing in a sense, but as Pras rightly points out, these are the inconsistent teams, so it's sort of like a high risk, high reward kind of thing, because you're actually, by playing the free hit, you're actually pushing yourself away from the template and go towards the more differential team, and hoping that things will pay off.
Yeah, hence today's episode's title is Check, Raise, or All In, because it's a lot of risk element here, and how much do you trust United, for example? And again, we don't condone gambling at all, but sometimes when you play the free hit, you want to be aggressive and make sure you get the doublers in, and so it'll be a very, very interesting free hit week for many managers out there.
I mean, here's what I'll say about free hit. A lot of people talk about doublers and the fact that you get to kind of get two bites at the cherry. A statistical analogy is, let's say you have like 11 dice, right? And every week you have single game weekers, and let's say everyone's expected points are 6. So you basically get to throw the dice 11 times and you get an expected outcome. This week in a double game week, when we have weeks like this, when we argue, these teams are not as nice, and you have the Salahs and the Man Cities, the Kanes playing and Suns playing once, it's basically like you have 2 dice for these less good teams, and the dice only goes up to 4. So you could end up throwing it twice and only getting a 2 and a 2, which is 4.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have got a 6 had you thrown the Kane dice. Is it worth it? Yeah, it's absolutely worth it, because you could get 2 4s and Kane could get a 2 instead of 6. I don't know if I'm complicating it, but it's simply the fact that you get 2 bites. And even though the ceiling of that dice is not 6, but a 4, you could still do well. So there's never any harm backing the doublers, but you have to see what that ceiling is. For somebody like a Weghorst, that dice only goes up to 2. So even if you throw it twice, you get 4 max. Whereas for Salah, the dice is basically, or Kane or Son, the dice goes from 4 or 5 or 6. So that's basically the statistical way of looking at it.
Awesome. 9 minutes in, and Pras already delivering the fire. So really like that analogy there. And already 9 minutes on fixture ticker. So let's move on to the next part of the show. So this is, we're going to look at some team stats. So first thing is team data, defensive data. And the main one being XG conceded. So this is the last 10, and then I'm going to show the last 5. So when Pras and I talk, we usually want to have sort of a reason for looking at, for example, the last 10 or the reason for last 5. But for this time, I just thought the last 10 and last 5 sort of made sense as, kind of second half of the season plus just recent game week. So what we see here is highlighted in yellow are the double teams. So surprisingly, actually conceded in the last 10, Burnley and Southampton are up there. And I've had some conversations with a couple of Southampton fans, not fans, but I guess fans and some friends who really follow them intently. And, as FPL managers, it's tough to actually look at every single game, every single team in very specifically. And a lot of my Southampton friends were saying that because I was considering dropping Livramento this week, they said Livramento is a decent shout to keep because they've been facing some tougher teams, and I think that we might be sleeping on Southampton, even though they're not showing the best form. So I take it, I say this lightly, but it's very interesting they're up there. Leicester, Brighton, Newcastle, Arsenal, and Man United also in here. And then if we should look at the last 5 game weeks XG conceded for the double teams, again highlighted in yellow. So very similar. I'm surprised Newcastle's sort of mid. I thought their defense was a little bit better than what the stat table shows. So yeah, any comments here for you, Pras?
I was also surprised to see Newcastle, but it could totally be just the Spurs game ruining it for them in the last 5 weeks. Because before that, we were talking about Newcastle as a good shout. Last 10 game weeks, I mean, with any statistical samples, the longer sample size, the bigger sample size you have, the better it is. So I think Newcastle is a very backable defense. Now, the longer we go into the season, so there is the sweet spot for statistics, right? I mean, once you've got maybe 10 games in, and you're then looking at stats for who are the best mids defenses, I think that starts to make sense. I think for me, that ends in game week 31, 32. It ends because, yes, you already know which are the good defenses, the good attacks. But now, and the statistical purists will come after me for this, but I definitely believe this, motivation comes into it. So even though you've been the best defense in the first 30 games, if you're a Southampton, if you're a Newcastle, if you're basically a team with not much to play for, or if you have other priorities like Leicester, up until yesterday, it was Chelsea as well, where people, James was rested simply because the priority was Champions League. So I think that also starts to play even a bigger part than the stats itself. But I think from a statistical point of view, you've covered it well. Newcastle defensively, the team to back. Now we have to see if the fixtures are right. And if that still is the case in Game Week 33.
Overthinker just made a great point. Saints have a new owner. We are hopeful of spending over the summer to rebuild the defense. Could be some players that have already checked out. Again, motivation becomes a factor. A lot of teams are on the beach. So certainly the last 7 or 8 game weeks, or not 7, 5 or 6 game weeks left, that will have a factor on many teams in the mid-table area. Zhou, I want to go to you. Is there anything you want to comment? Pras, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted to, before that, I also wanted to add a caveat that the reason the stats guys don't like this motivational thing, because it's hard to predict, right? I mean, look at last week. What happened with Southampton is predictable. They're losing focus. They're not in it. But then what happened with Brighton? How did they suddenly come out of the beach and beat Arsenal? You could argue it's because of Arsenal's injury issues, but surely Arsenal should have been a much better team, much better defense, much better attack. How come they ended up losing to a team on the beach? It's very hard to predict which game a team just decides to show up and which game they don't, which is why if you go to review or if you go to anybody who's only focused on stats, they just ignore this. And form is another one where they just say, look, I'm not predicting it, so it's not part of what I consider as my expected outcome.
When the Southampton friends, very, very few numbers, say their defense is actually better than it looks, which is, 1 or 2 opinions, but, XG conceded is right up there at the top. How would you kind of take that in? Would you believe the stats?
Yeah. I mean, that the stats are telling you, whether that's because they're on the beach, whether they're just not very good or they have injury issues, all of that are soft factors. But the outcome that it's telling you is that this defense should concede.
Okay. Zhou, anything you want to comment here?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what Pras mentioned, or at least how you compare, 5 game weeks to 10 game weeks, because the thing with 5 game weeks is that a single outlier can just skew the whole data. So if you look at 10 game weeks, past 10 game weeks, Newcastle is actually 5th in terms of the least XGC. Whereas if you look at the past 5 game weeks, they drop to the middle. So it could be skewed because of a certain outlier or things like that. So which is why it's good to have both to look at, because the as what Pras mentioned, like the many samples you look at in terms of statistics, you will see the quality of the team, how consistent is the team. So based on the past 10 game weeks, Newcastle looks like the team to back, especially with their fixtures this week. And And I personally, it's probably one of the I believe there are teams. There's a thing called on the beach. It's because uh we at the end, no matter how the stats points out, we are all human. We are driven by motivation. There are just some days the team influence each other to turn up, and so some days, if you just look at Man United, just nobody chose to turn up. So we it's always good to look at stats, but it's also good to look at the body language, the team's motivation. It's always good to have a combination of these two to actually make an informed decision.
Yeah, all good points. Let's move on to the attacking team stats first. Sorry, I just had a little bit of technical issue, so I'm trying to get back on track. Okay, so this is again attacking data from the last 10 game weeks, and then attacking data from the last 5 game weeks. Just purely XG per 90. Just purely XG. And again, highlighted in yellow are the double teams. So here we did a little bit of just a bit of a summary. Is Spurs top in the last 5 game weeks. Overperforming, and it could be due to Son and Kane being clinical. And I want to say something on this, Pras. Well, I don't know why you're laughing, but
here we go on Son again, guys.
Here we go. He had a hat trick with 3 shots, so it just goes to show
how lucky he got. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here we go. How clinical he is. Okay, and then United, suggesting how poor they have been in the last 5 game weeks. Highest against the highest XGC over the last 5 game weeks and 10 game weeks. Could be the time for correction since United are 4th in XG over the last 10 game weeks on the left. And then I think Norwich is also sort of overperforming. Zhou, would you say?
I mean, I think Norwich, just dial back a little bit. If you look at the goals conceded, Norwich, I think we can agree definitely on whether is it past 5 game weeks or whether is it past 10 game weeks. Norwich, they top the XGC, meaning they top the expected goals conceded, and also they probably, but they are not top in terms of goals conceded. So that's something to look at. Whether their defense is overperforming or not. One might look at the matches, especially against the Brighton match, where they conceded such a high XG, but they don't actually concede those goals. So it could be due to individual brilliance, such as Tim Krul, saving them time and again. But definitely in terms of goals conceded and expected goals conceded, Norwich, they're probably overperforming in terms of defense. But in terms of XG, I think Norwich, they are on par with especially if you look at the past 5 game weeks, they are on par, with the goals against their XG. So I think if you talk about XG, I think Norwich maybe not really something a team to talk about, in terms of attack, other than maybe Timo Pukki.
Yeah. I think Pukki's a decent shout. Mm-hmm. Again, you go back to motivation, right? This is it for them. I think the next 3-4 games will define relegation. Now, you might say yes, they're probably already doomed, but I think as players they will still be motivated. They'll want to do well, and Pukki is a decent shout for Norwich. We'll come to individual players, but I think as teams, and a note on Man United as well. Obviously, the last 5 includes City, and I have to say, usually I don't back Man United as much. The attack is looking fine.
Yep.
Even in the game against Everton, the team was fine. I mean, there's something not clicking, and as soon as you go down a goal, then completely everything falls apart. So there can be a scenario for free hitters. There can be a scenario where Man United score a couple of quick goals, suddenly the confidence is flowing, and then tactics don't matter. Then it's basically the individual brilliance everything seems to be clicking. You cannot rule out the fact that the Man United attack can click against the Norwich side.
Yes.
So backing them on a free hit. I mean, I saw somebody tweet out, will you have any players from Man United on a free hit? I mean, I think that's rubbish. I think minimum 2, if not 3, is something that you'd back from Man United, even if they're playing Liverpool, because you just back the Norwich fixture, right?
Yep.
Agreed. And, Pras doesn't support Son, but I'm going to support him on United here. Just kidding. But just if you look at this Everton game in isolation, right? I 100% agree with you, Pras. Remember also before Bruno doubled, I think in 22 or 23, he was kind of under the radar and then, had 40 something points, right? So same thing could happen. But if you look at this game, I was looking at it. Rashford started on the left and Sancho started on the right. And I think that was fatal to that team. And Rangnick made a big mistake doing that. And it's sort of to cater to Rashford because he is still a quality player and struggling this season. So he put him on his preferred position. And, Sancho's been great, so he can kind of do the multiplayer kind of thing. But what happened then is that Sancho had 37 touches in the first 70 minutes. And that's second least after Fred, who had, I think, 34 touches or something. So basically, Sancho excels when he has an attacking wing back where he works with and he does those 1-2 punches and 1-2 passes and sort of bombs forward like his Dortmund days. When you have Wan-Bissaka on the right and you have 37 touches, you're not going to do anything. So what happened in the 70th minute is Rangnick made this mistake, put Sancho on the left, put Elanga on the right, but had United converted those early chances, game would have been different. Now they're one behind. Sancho goes to his preferred position, has Telles attacking with him. However, it's Ronaldo isolated alone up top with nobody running into the box, nobody supporting it even close to the box. So for the last 20 minutes, it's an easy, close game for Everton. So yes, I know tactics isn't a big thing, but Rangnick made a big mistake starting Sancho on the right and not the left. And that had a big fatal effect on the entire team. Plus them conceding so early wasn't ideal for them. So I am very optimistic about this Norwich game, to say the least. Yeah.
I mean, sorry.
No, go on, Joe.
I just tweeted, I think on somewhere, it's just a gut feel, the home game against Norwich is the perfect Man United game to be Man United, just suddenly smash teams at home and then brings everybody's hopes up again, So it's just so United if they smash Norwich at Old Trafford. It's
but equally it's so Man United to have a 1-1. They can do anything. This is the thing, and this is true of all the teams that are doubling. I mean, you can see Newcastle having a 3-0, 2-0, or you can see Newcastle having a 2-1 loss and a 1-1. You just never know which team will show up. Same for, Burnley, you don't know. Southampton, you don't know. It's probably true for pretty much all the doubling teams, and Arsenal even more so now, given that we don't know how they're shaping up over the last 2 games. They have shown everything that we didn't see before in terms of inconsistency and just not clicking. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. But I probably shouldn't have been so eager on United. But anyways, if you're looking at, just to summarize the rest of this table, Arsenal, Southampton, Brighton underperforming. And Joe suggests that once the fixtures are kinder, goals should be coming. Would you agree with this, Pras?
Sorry, which team did you mention?
Arsenal, Southampton, and Brighton.
Yeah, I think, look, I still back Arsenal completely, given, again, the fact that they're fighting. Yes, the team has had to adjust with the injuries to Tierney, Partey. It makes a big difference, but I back the manager to work it out. And if it's a good fixture, the fact that the team is still motivated, I think they'll come strong. And you'll see in my bus team, I'm still backing somebody like a Saka over the double. So they're fine. We'll come to other individual teams like Southampton and others in relation to the players themselves, not the team.
Yep. And then finally, Newcastle mid-table in XG past last 10 game weeks, but only 4 home games. And we could see them do better in the next 2, which are both home games. So, I think Newcastle and Manchester United are the 2 hot teams that people are talking about, plus Leicester mids, but we'll get there.
Yep.
And then the next slide is sort of a player pool for just single isolated Game Week 33. So I'm sure there's a few of these out there on Twitter, but this is sort of what Zhou and I talked about, and mostly this is sort of the player pool that Zhou had because he is on the free hit this game week. And so we went through a couple teams, went through the options, and no particular rank, but just options and player pool of game week 33 doublers. So I don't know, how should we do this? Zhou, you want to explain maybe some of your thinking here, or should we wait till we get to your team?
We can go by squares if you want.
Okay,
we can talk
sure.
about keepers for a bit, defenders, mids, and strikers. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, keepers, obviously Dubravka from Newcastle, Schmeichel from Leicester, Ramsdale from Arsenal, De Gea from Manchester United, and Pope from Burnley were the options we came across. Is there one that you particularly like, and who are you going to be starting, Zhou?
I mean, I particularly, it's either Dubravka or Schmeichel for me. But Schmeichel, it really depends on how many minutes at least the whole Leicester team is involved in their European Conference League against PSV. So and plus Dubravka, he's probably the cheapest starting goalkeeper, besides Foster, but in the cheapest double game week goalkeeper and decent fixtures, both at home and against potentially tired teams. So currently, I'm backing Dubravka over Schmeichel. Yeah. So Dubravka is probably the keeper I would go for in my free hit team. Mm-hmm.
So my thoughts on keepers is simply, you have options in defense for Newcastle as well, similar priced options. And if we're talking about Newcastle, they're playing two teams that are weak in set pieces. So can you basically attack that aspect of it, which is, both Leicester and Crystal Palace have conceded through corners. We attacked the Wolves players back in 26, I think, for that reason. We attacked the Arsenal players in 29 for a similar reason, or I forget which exact one it was. But you could look at basically, so the comparison will come down to, do you want Dubravka or you want a Dan Burn or somebody like that? Of course, you could double up in defense as well. With Schmeichel, it's a little bit of a scarcity value, right? There's no defenders that are nailed to score in both games. And so there could be an argument that you go Schmeichel so that you get some part of Leicester defense if you wanted some part of it. And then with De Gea, the thing is, I have said in the past that I think he's the best keeper for this week in terms of expected points, at least in my mind. But now that Shaw is injured, I think Tellez is probably better for cheaper in terms of just absolute FPL cost. So I think that has then changed the thinking in terms of who the third best Man United asset is. So I think those will be the three guys. The only thing here is we're only talking about doublers, people with single game weekers, obviously size blanking, but then Ramsdale is popular. So people who have Ramsdale, like myself in my team, very happy to play him because I think Arsenal defense, even though it's weaker, you can still back it. It's definitely not worth taking him out if you're not on free hit.
Yeah.
Just a word on Schmeichel too, is, he does really behave. Granted, Leicester's defense hasn't been great, like a value FPL keeper, conceding barely any XG when they keep clean sheets and saving high post shot XG shots if they do concede. So he usually does rack up at least 3 saves. So I think a decent shout, but I do like the Dubravka shout there. If I'm on a free hit, I'm doubling up on their defense. So possibly Dubravka plus a defender. It'd be very interesting to go.
Yep. And one thing about Schmeichel is he somehow has that he somehow is pretty good at saving penalties. He saved the penalty against Zaha as well. So might be worth considering.
But which game do you guys see a clean sheet though? Leicester or Crystal Palace?
4.
for
Dubravka.
Newcastle. I mean, I'm just answering in terms of double defense. I mean, I'm thinking both teams will score, right?
I mean, like you said, it's a double game week, So,
right.
I mean, I would hope for at least a clean sheet over the double. So whether is it the first one or the second one, but I think currently leaning more towards the Palace one. Because
Palace have been poorer away from home, so possibly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
and
more
then back.
Sorry, Pras. Yeah, I think it's just
I was
more.
Saying,
go ahead.
I was saying maybe Leicester are just kind of tired from their travels, and it can happen. But both are attacking teams. Was my point. Sorry, Sonaldo.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I think it was just for me, 2 home games, and just taking a bet and hoping for 1 clean sheet out of 2, as Joe mentioned as well. So, yeah. And then let's go to defenders. Target, Shar, Burn. Let's skip the Newcastle section for now because I have some stats on them after. Marty, Justin. Justin's going to be very interesting after the European game. And then there's Ben White, Gabriel, Cedric, and then Telles, Livramento, and Tarkovsky. So not the best Game Week 33 options. Plus, especially if you're not free hitting or using any chips this game week, you need to be making moves for the premium defenders after beyond 33. So any standouts here that you thought about, Joe?
I think for me, Telles is the one that is interesting. I mean, if you're on free hit, he's only 5 million. I think, and then his spot should be nailed because I think Shaw is still out with an injury or even going through a surgery, if I'm not mistaken. So Telles, he's on. I think he shares on set pieces, and he's fairly attacking. So, probably he's probably the standout player for me to own during a free hit. And especially if let's say Rangnick heard what you said, Sonaldo, and put Sancho on the left with Telles, who knows what's going to happen against Norwich. So I think he's probably the standout option for me. Besides, I mean, the next Telles is probably the standout option for me in terms of double game week defenders.
Pras, how about you?
I think this is, as a non-free hitter, this is the place where I'm hoping to make the most ground on free hitters because there's no good defenders. Of course, you can get lucky with a clean sheet or something, but if you filter by expected points for all the teams that have a double game week, I think in the top 20 there's not a single defender, and that's simply because these teams haven't been traditionally, or Newcastle are getting better, but you can't back Man United for a clean sheet. It's hard to back. Definitely not a Tarkowski or a Livramento type. And I think, by the way, from Southampton, I would go Walker Peters probably over Livramento. But it's just, you just have difficulty backing these teams. So I'm happy to play Robertson, Trent, and James and Cancelo over any of these guys, quite frankly. And that's basically what comes. And I see Cancelo in a lot of free hit teams as well. And that's probably the reason that apart from Telles and maybe a Newcastle defender, Arsenal, obviously, we've talked about, are decent. I wouldn't back anyone that strongly. Of course, you can punt on them, but from an expected points basis, I wouldn't back them very strongly.
Yeah, I have nothing to disagree with you guys on here. It's a very weak player pool, and I think this is where a lot rides on the Newcastle guys, and possibly Telles for those who are free hitting in 33. So yeah, let's go to mids. Mids, we've got Bruno from Newcastle, Madison, Barnes, Shrewsbury Hall from Leicester, Martinelli, Odegaard, Saka from Arsenal, Bruno and Sancho from United, JWP from Southampton, and then Cornet from Burnley. So, mixed bag of options here. Obviously, there's a couple of ones that stand out. Arsenal, we're all pretty much loaded up on anyway. Sancho is a very interesting one. Bruno is going to be, I think, probably a very clear captaincy shout for most free hitters who do bring him in. So yeah, I would like to know your thoughts here, Zhou first.
I mean, like I think we've also discussed about this. If you look at Newcastle's midfield, I think besides Willock is out, Fraser is also out. So Bruno, I think he played pretty well, ever since he came in. But because the mids they're pretty stacked in terms of options, budget options or even premium options. So Bruno is probably a differential. If he's decent, but I should prefer an attacker and probably double defense if I were to go for Newcastle. Leicester's midfield is also very interesting because you have the likes of Maddison Barnes and Dewsbury Hall. When during their good days, they're pretty attacking, but it really depends on their match against PSV. Who's involved, how many minutes are they involved, and because right now the Leicester defense and the midfield and even the forward options, it's sort of like a minefield in terms of FPL. Like Barnes got benched last game week. When we expect Iheanacho to start, Daka starts instead. So it's pretty much a minefield. But I would say, these three are probably the most nailed ones. But it really depends on the game against PSV. Arsenal, I think Martinelli, Odegaard, and Saka. I think of all these options, probably Saka is the most popular one, and probably the most explosive one as well. Nailed, definitely. So probably Saka will probably still be in most of our teams, but that's the thing, players without free hit will already have Saka. So would you still bring in Saka on a free hit? Maybe, some of my drafts I have Martinelli instead of Saka, probably due to budget constraints as well. But it's worth something to consider as well. Man United, I think Bruno, like what you say, stand out captaincy option, nailed. And Sancho is probably like a differential. I think he'll be an interesting shot as well. I've seen some teams bringing Sancho in, and I think he's an exciting player over the double game week. JWP, he's also another for Southampton, because he takes the penalties and he takes the free kicks. He could be worth a shout over the double game week as well, because especially games where they barely could attack, but if they get a free kick in a dangerous area, it could be just, he's the one who if anybody is going to get points out of these kind of games, he's probably the only one that is worth that will get those points. Kone, yeah, he has individual brilliance, but I think overall Burnley would probably be still the team to avoid in terms of attack at the moment. That's just probably how I feel about Burnley at the moment.
Pras, you want to add anything here?
No, I think everything on this page other than Arsenal players is a differential. So anyone you go for will get you points ahead of the pack. Those asking about Bruno from Newcastle, interestingly, apart from Willock, who's still a doubt, and Fraser, who's out, he's got the best underlying stats. So from an XA perspective, the guy is still okay. So I think none of us are saying we go for a Newcastle midfielder, but if you were to go on, he's probably the best one to back. So maybe not an FPL option, but still he's there. Leicester mids, completely agree with you. It depends on the lineup tonight, but I think it'll be nice to back one or two of them, and just take a punt on minutes. It was nice that Barnes got a rest. Maybe he plays both doubles, but it'll be a bit of a punt. But I don't think anything else I have to add on top of Joe.
Yeah. Just to quickly summarize, I do want to add something on Bruno G. I'm not going to pronounce his last name. You bringing in Bruno G is basically exploiting Fraser's injury, right? That's just an opportunity that you can see here. If you look at the last game, and Newcastle's chances in open play came from the right flank in minute 21, 44, 59, 64, using the trio of Bruno, Almiron, and occasionally ASM too. So throughout the whole match, Bruno played progressive passes constantly, not constantly, but in and out of the game, while also registering a significant XG of 0.152. So, the signs are there, right? And you could see him making those darting runs into the box. And finally, on the Leicester, I do agree, watch out for the Europa Conference game. But so far, the players that have kept their spot after the conference game are Justin, KDH, Nacho, and Barnes. So I think if you're worried about I think it comes down to X minutes when it comes to Leicester. So, yeah. And then the forwards. What did you decide here, Zhou? Who do you want to go for?
I think of all the options here, personally, I mean, if you look at like I mentioned just now, Leicester team really depends on the PSV game. But other than that, even so, I'll probably avoid Leicester first. And in terms of Newcastle, if you look at Wood and ASM is exciting. Is an exciting player. Like if you watch him play, he'll be everywhere. But since his minutes might be limited due to the way he plays, and Wood is probably the best bet if you want a player that gets all 90 minutes. So currently, my free hit team I have Wood in, but really toying with the idea of switching to ASM instead. And mind you, because Newcastle is playing against tired legs in the likes of Leicester and Palace. So ASM might have a field day in both games. Other than that, Lacazette, Ronaldo, Adams are probably the other players that I would consider. Wakehorse, yeah, I think probably we can't wait to just bin him, especially on in my free hit. He's a player that the first I bin. Wakehorse definitely. Broya, I think if you still have him, he's worth playing because I think he got rested against Chelsea, so I can see him get at least both games starting, but maybe early subs maybe.
Nice.
Compared to Adams. So out of all these strikers, I would consider Wood, ASM, Ronaldo, and Adams, especially if you're on a free hit team.
Yeah, nice. Pras?
I would just keep penalties as an important consideration because of the two games. So for me, that basically puts Wood slightly better. Obviously, funds come into it. Even with Ronaldo and Bruno, we've been there before in the last double game week that Man United had. But I wouldn't mind backing a Ronaldo for a captaincy or the guy to back for more points simply because the guy's on penalties. He could be the one that is in the points. And look, you saw with Salah, right? Game week 26, game week 29, he got penalties, he got the points. So I think penalties comes into it. So also with JWP in midfield that we talked about, backing penalty takers if you're on a 50-50 can work. And maybe ASM, by the way, Joe, that you mentioned, could help getting those penalties as well for Wood.
Mm-hmm.
So I think good option. Broha, as you mentioned, he was obviously couldn't play against the parent club. Now could have more minutes in the double. You just play. I mean, I don't think he's a free hit pick, but he's also not one that you need to sell ahead of the double game week to get somebody else. I mean, as usual, this we talk about every week. There are no strikers in FPL other than Kane, and Kane is still the best striker in this double game week, even though he doesn't have a double game week. So that's where we are.
Yeah, and FPL A plus makes a great point. Shea Adams' underlying stats have been pretty good, and every time I watch Southampton play as a Broja owner, it's frustrating because it seems like all the chances fall to Adams, at least from the eye test as well. So I think definitely Adams is a good shout. But do you want another attacker in your free hit? I don't think so. So yeah.
What's your formation, by the way, Joe? I mean, are you looking at two strikers or like a 4-5-1 or something?
I'm currently either 3-4-3 or 3-5-2.
Okay.
Whoa.
So you could go for three strikers. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, I just think for the rest of the season, given the lack of strikers, people might just switch to one, max two strikers. So it'll be interesting to see your drafts with the three up top.
Yeah. Okay, so this table is XGI for all defenders per 90 in the last 5 game weeks. Again, you have to filter out this stat table because you can obviously see someone like Reguilon fourth up there. But I thought it was very interesting that Livermento's XGI is not too bad amongst all defenders. So I accidentally circled Laporte. I'm supposed to circle all the double game week players, so please do ignore that. And then we have Cedric, Byrne, and then the other 2 Newcastle defenders plus Duncan there, which we don't care about. So, yeah. And then this is sort of a Newcastle defender stats table for the last 5 game weeks. Again, this shows chances created, goal attempts, and bonus points. And I think Shar is kind of skewed here because of his free kick goal, right? Very interesting here. I think chances created target is higher than the rest of the guys. Is this because target is more bombs a little bit further forward than Shar, for example?
Yeah,
I think he takes some corners as well, right?
Yeah.
I think he plays a fullback role.
And Shar is on some direct free kicks, so that basically explains the XG versus the XA.
Yeah, and Shah and Byrne, they are also the target men usually during set pieces and corners. So that's also something worth considering, especially what Pras mentioned just now, that Leicester and Palace, they are generally weaker against set pieces, which is why Shah is probably the standout option because he's so cheap as well.
I have a question for you guys. If you were to double up on the defense, excluding the keeper, and the options are obviously target, Byrne, or Shar, which 2 would you consider doubling up on?
Probably target and Shah.
Pras?
But perhaps. I could see the value of Byrne. I have not checked out their prices. I don't know. Are they similar in price?
Byrne is 4.4, same as Shah.
Yeah.
Right. There's not much in it. I mean, when a team is weak in set pieces or weak from headers, you can go for the guy putting the cross in, or you can go for the guy in the box. You could get either. It's not, there's no right answer. I think Shah target, go for a couple of them. This is why I was thinking maybe Dubravka isn't the best shout for the goalkeeper, is because maybe you want 2 of these guys in the defense, but it's there's not a lot in it.
Yeah. Okay, and then finally a stats table on XJ amongst all forwards per 90 in the last 5 game weeks, and we can see Lacazette up there, Adams up there, Maupay, Wood, and Ronaldo quite further down in the list. But just some interesting stat tables.
Adams is up there again, so actually he's a very good shout. I hadn't realized how well he's doing in terms of his last few underlines. Yeah.
So before we go to sort of a free hit 33 template, what I want to do is kind of touch on what the managers that do not have chips this week or not free hitting or very limited chips moving forward should be considering this game week. And so basically I kind of thought about 4 different teams. So Man City first. KDB is great option, right? Fantastic player. I mean, maybe one of the best players in the league, maybe the best player in the league, and obviously doing great. But how do you bring it in? It's most active managers have Salah around 90%, Son 40-something%, Kane 60-something%. So you basically have to lose one of these guys to fund a 1.5% EO in KDB. And I don't know if that risk is worth it, but maybe if you're chasing rank, it might be a viable option. And if you do lose Salah, you can sort of free the funds and go like something like Jota plus 2 Liverpool defenders and run the 4-5-1. But I've thought about it, losing Salah, but I just don't. I think he could easily come back with a hat trick even this game week. So I don't think I would lose him here. So KDB is very, very difficult to fit in basically. And Cancelo is one that everyone should be considering because by game week 35, I'm pretty sure that everyone will have one of Cancelo, TA, Robbo, James, a differential defender. So I think it is an essential move to make sure you have him. And when you bring him in is sort of a timing thing. But any thoughts on long-term players being Man City and who would you bring in? Pras?
I completely agree with you. I think these are the guys to target. I mean, even from 34, these are the teams that have the best fixtures and have something to play for. And if you only have one City, try to get the second at a minimum. Or if you have none, definitely get Cancelo. I think my order would still be Cancelo, then maybe whoever you can get to. And KDB is just very hard to get. I think the only way KDB fits into the setup is if you go Salah, KDB and Son, and then you just go very cheap up front. Again, if you're bench boosting, you can't do that. If you're not on a wild card, you can't do that. Maybe wildcarders in 34 can look at something like that. But otherwise, unless you're prepared to sacrifice or take the risk of selling Son, Kane, Salah, you basically have to say KDB is not for me, and you go for somebody like a Foden. The thing with the defenders is, other than Cancelo, I'm struggling because I think I saw Diaz is now fit, or at least getting close
Training.
to fitness. Yeah. So Laporte has been good throughout the season, but it just puts a little bit of doubt that, in game week 36, if you're not on a free hit, are you going to back a centre back from Man City? That makes it a little bit iffy. So I'm still open to who the third Man City player is. Is that a Laporte or a Walker or an Edison versus you go for the upside with a De Bruyne just for a week, maybe if it's a double.
Interesting. How about you, Zhou? Any Man City priorities you would bring in? I'm assuming Cancelo's first.
I think Pras. I agree with Pras because KDB is sort of like a luxury kind of option to go for, because how can you fit him in?
Yeah.
Unless you drop one of the other big hitters, like Kane.
Mm-hmm.
So, but of course, some might. I mean, if you're chasing rank or you're trying something different, KDB is definitely. Some might even say KDB from game week 34 up to the end, he might even score more points as compared to Salah, which it's not impossible. So it's just whether are we willing to take that risk or not.
Yeah.
Which I feel, if I were chasing, it's probably something I would do, bringing KDB in for the likes of maybe Kane or even Salah.
Yep, I agree. I think if I'm chasing, I would make that move as well for either Kane or Salah. But removing Kane for KDB has this risk because, we're very limited on striker slots. So, if you have to play a forward every single week, he's like the only option. And if you're a long-term planning, I guess on the topic of strikers, Mateta is the new Broya, so take it lightly. But 13 shots in the last 6 games is exactly what you want from a 5.3 million striker, and you can bench him anytime. So someone else to consider for the long term. And finally, for those non-free hitting or non-chippers this game week 33, Spurs certainly should be someone you should consider. Granted, their double in 36 is difficult, but if you can navigate 36 with a free hit, I think picking 2 of Son, Kane, Kulusevski makes complete sense. And so, I'm not going to get into this too much, but yeah, pick your poison here and sort of roll with it. And on this topic, Pras, I'll just quickly ask you, if you have Kane, right? And I know Son's doing great. There's no chance you would move Kane on to get Son, for example, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Let's not go there again. I mean, we had this Kane going to Son going to Kane 5 weeks ago. I mean, Kane is still getting 3 assists, multiple returns in a game.
Yeah, amazing.
And I've already talked about his underlying. But before we talk about moving on to other free hit topics, I think there's a couple of interesting points to make for non-free hitters. So number one, there's a chance that the Man United Chelsea game fits in 34. Because now Chelsea are out of the Champions League from last night. What this means is that if United and Chelsea play in 34, then you have United with a double-double. So normally you would say ignore the United game. They're playing Liverpool in the double as well. Next game week, they'll play Arsenal and Chelsea. So in a 2-game week space, they will have Arsenal's, Liverpool and Chelsea, but it's still 4 games, right? So I think in that scenario, people thinking about going Salah-less, Salah to Bruno just for the week, just for the 2 weeks could be worth it, maybe. So going for a Man United asset could become more appealing if that was the case. Now, I think people who are free hitting could still be okay, because what you do is this week you get Man United, next week you get more Chelsea for the Chelsea double instead of getting more Man United players for this tough double-double. So that's one consideration. We may or may not hear before the game week deadline for this week whether there is a double game week in 34 or not, which is very annoying because there's about 14 days from the deadline to the actual fixture when it could fall, because it'll fall on a Thursday because they wouldn't do it conflicting with the Champions League. So if we get a notification before the deadline, I think people can be a little bit more aggressive with their Man United picks just because of the double-double. Now, I wouldn't sell a Trent or a Robertson or a Cancelo for a Telles, but I think punting on a Sancho for the double-double could maybe be worth it. I'm not sure yet, like I mentioned, for the Salah to Bruno shift, because you will definitely want Salah back later, but that's one simple consideration. The other one is, do you spend your transfers? Let's say the double doesn't happen. Do you spend your transfers getting a doubler or 2, or do you spend your transfers going for the more long-term picks, like you mentioned, the Matetas, the City picks, the Chelsea picks, even though they don't have a double this week? Do you spend your transfers there? And I think I'm in the camp of the latter, where if Man United and Chelsea are not doubling, I would rather use my transfer to get my second Man City this week, or for people who don't have a third Spurs, or for people who don't have a Chelsea defender, I would rather use my transfer there than going for a Newcastle or a Manchester United player. If Man United don't have a double-double and Chelsea don't have a double in 34.
Yep, well put. Zhou, you want to add anything, or should we go to your free hit?
No, I have nothing to add.
I think if I just added one thing here, another very interesting angle, Pras, is for those with the wild card, and if you're wild carding in 34, you should be focusing on possibly punting on Newcastle United or Southampton. If you're wild carding in 35, I would consider Newcastle punt even heavier as of now, unless we get that 34 fixture for United as well. So yeah.
Because Newcastle played Norwich in 34. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're close to the hour mark. Let's do some free hit examples I've received from 2 people in the community who are both teachers in real life. So thank you for this. First, from our good friend Andy, FplMode. This is his free hit team. The notes he gave me are pen takers galore. So Pras, as you mentioned, he's very interested in the penalty takers, Kane, Ronaldo, and Chris Wood. And then he could switch Maddison to JWP after the Euro fixture just because of minute security. He's taking the chance on the double castle defense, and looks like he got Target and Char in there. And Kane and Son, the only singlers that he wants. I like that. And then the idea is to go all in a free hit in terms of doubles and just hope and have some luck that follows with this plan. And I really think this is a very good template, strong free hit team. And he says the front seven are pretty set. Obviously he's missing the big hitters from City and Liverpool. And, that makes sense because it is a free hit based on a double game week with single fixtures as well. So, any bashing here for you two here, or any compliments you want to give?
I actually really like this team.
Mm-hmm.
Looks pretty good. Mm-hmm. Only 2 single game week players. You have 9 double game week players. Probably the only move I would do, the change I would make is probably Gabriel out for Telles.
Nice.
And just roll with it. Just go with it. Yeah. That's just a personal thing.
Yeah. I think Pras is going to do some. Is muted for a second.
No, I'm here.
Okay, cool.
I agree. Look, I think he's gone Gabriel to counter Ramsdale. Because most non-free hitters will have Ramsdale. So I get it. You'd rather be a little bit defensive for a spot that you're not sure of than back a Man United defender who could get, -1 against Liverpool. So I think Telles is still the defender with the highest upside. So it's a risk and reward thing. I think he's gone for the risk on the double Man United attack. He's gone for the risk on the double defense of Newcastle, the double Leicester. And then he's gone a little bit safe with Kane and Son and Gabriel, which I think I would categorize still as the safe picks. No matter what Spurs are doing, going for a double attack in a single game week maybe sounds like a little bit safer. If you wanted to kind of dial up the risk, you go Sancho instead of a Son. You upgrade the Gabriel to a James or a Cancelo, and therefore you're taking a bigger risk backing against an Arsenal and backing against a Son or Kane. So that's one. Maybe Kane goes for De Bruyne if you wanted to back that fixture as well. But look, I think this is all good. One thing to note for people backing single game weekers. So I think Spurs are fine because Spurs will play on the weekend. So when you pick the team, they will play on the weekend and you're fine to get the single game weeker. The issue with backing a Chelsea, Liverpool, or a City single game weeker is that they actually play the FA Cup semi-final on the weekend, and then they play on the midweek in terms of their Premier League fixture. So you're taking a slight risk that you went for De Bruyne on your free hit, but then De Bruyne played the 90 minutes in the FA Cup and limped off with a slight niggle, and then he misses the midweek game, and then you suddenly don't have a player. And this is an issue for non-free hitters even more so, because non-free hit teams are loaded with more Liverpool, more some City and some Chelsea. And so there's 2 impacts to this. Number one, your game week rank at the end of the weekend will look terrible because you've had none of your players have played yet, or none of the big hitters have played yet. And the second impact is that you're taking a slight risk that your player plays the 90 minutes and then comes off and then misses the midweek.
Interesting point.
Nice. Okay, Let's run through the next team. This is presented by Teacher_FPL, another good friend of mine, who's hasn't been able to sort it out into the actual starting lineup. But just to give you what his starting lineup is Schmeichel, Cancelo, Laporte, White. So just caveat here, the reason why I also asked Teacher is because he's a very, very maverick type of manager compared to Teach Mode. And so Cancelo, Laporte, White as his starting back line. And then he has
Calling
Bruno.
Teach Mode a boring old man. No, sorry to interrupt.
Hopefully Andy's not listening. In the midfield, he's got Bruno, KDB, Son, Pogba, KDH. And then up top, he's got Wood and Kane. By the way, Zhou, Lucian is Teacher_FPL is also from Malaysia, a fellow countryman for you. So yeah, I mean, he said his core squad is 3 Man City, 2 Tottenham attack, Bruno, Schmeichel plus KDH, differentials being Pogba, Wood, and his third defender. the reason Pogba was chosen for him is late runner into the box, and very dangerous when Bruno was number 9. So, he's a very tactical type of FPL manager, and so there's reasonings behind all his moves. Alternatives would be Madison, Saka, and even Kulusevski, according to him. And then why Wood was chosen, 2 home games without Fraser represents the next best threat. Alternatives would be Iheanacho, Adams, and Tony. And his third defender, he's considering Dalot over Telles. So, yeah, very interesting there. But another just differential type of free hit, game week 33. And, before you disagree or agree with any of these free hits, free hit is also meant to, kind of risk it, have fun, and sort of do your thing. So, yeah, appreciate this free hit. Do you guys want to comment on it?
Maybe I'll just go first. I mean, the only thing that I don't really fancy on this free hit is that there are too many single game week players. I think there are 5 single game week players. So that's probably the only caveat I have. And whether Dalot, will he start both games over Wan-Bissaka? I think he's still a risk. Somehow Rangnick also still likes Wan-Bissaka and he puts him in. So Dalot is probably one of the weaker links in this free hit team because of his uncertainty of minutes. But other than that, I don't have any issues with this team. I mean, Pogba is a maverick move. It could pay off in the Norwich game, but he does. Yeah, it's risky. I mean, he has his reasons, and probably it's his main maverick move, which is why I probably have no real questions over it.
Yeah.
Maybe Pras has more to say about this team.
I think what I like about this team is he's backed against popular thinking. So popular thinking is Saka has to be in. I need to back Arsenal. He's basically said, look, I think Arsenal are looking weak. I'm going to go against it on a free hit, even though they have a double. So I like that. He's gone against the whole concept of Newcastle defense, probably because he also thinks Leicester and Crystal Palace are attacking teams, and I don't want to basically back a double defense. I'd rather get a double City defense. And when you think about it, one game for a double City defense may be better than, again, going back to the dice analogy that I had in the beginning, you pretty much have a nailed clean sheet with Laporte if he plays, and Cancelo is likely to play. So I can see the thinking, and I think it's a clever draft. And what he gets from out of all of this is, compared to Andy's draft that we looked at, he's got a De Bruyne in addition to Bruno, Son, and Kane. And he's basically done a Ronaldo. Instead of Ronaldo, he's got a De Bruyne in there. You can argue whether that's the right move or not. So that's what Pogba is allowing. Pogba and Dalot are allowing a De Bruyne instead of a Ronaldo. So there's no draft that you can look at on a free hit 33 and say that this is bad or this is good. You're just calibrating the risk. And if you have 5 single game weekers, maybe the risk is slightly less. You're not going against the big single game weekers. And if you have lots of double game weekers, you're basically taking high risk, high reward strategy.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say is just on this note, a while back, I had a conversation with my friend Kamzi, and one thing that he said to me that stood out is when you are an FPL manager and you have sort of your kind of philosophy, whether that be pragmatic or maverick or upside chasing, whatever the term may be, he believes that through his experience, it's important to sort of stick to your philosophy throughout the season instead of being kind of wishy-washy and chasing here and then being pragmatic here and this and that. And FPL Teacher is actually pretty decent rank this year. I think he's just under maybe 30K or something. But he's played this game this way this entire season, where he thinks outside the box and different to everybody. So a shout out to Teacher for being very aggressive with your picks, also believing in your picks as well. So thank you for these 2 drafts from these 2 friends of mine.
He's actually in the chat as well,
Is he?
Andy.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's saying he doesn't have budget for Tellers. He couldn't go Pogba to Sancho. And this is why he's gone for that. I think ideally if he had more budget, he's saying he would probably have gone for those 2. But yeah, can't fault any of it.
Perfect. Now we are here for Zhou's bashing party from presented by Pras _FPL. So
I'm not bashing anyone. You've played it up too much.
But okay, so take us away, Zhou.
Okay, so I think if you look at this team, maybe I'll just say this is the first free hit team. So maybe I'll just point out who am I going to bench or what formation I'm going to play. So if you look at
maybe
this
read
team,
it out first, Joe, as well.
Oh yeah, please.
Oh yeah, okay. So my keepers are Dubravka and Steele, which I'm going to bench. And in my defense, I'm going for Talas, Shaw, Amati, Simicas, and Cancelo. And in midfield, I'm going for Dewsbury Hall, Maddison, Martinelli, Son, and Bruno Fernandes. And in striker, I'm going for Kane, Wood, and Ronaldo. So this is the first free hit team. And I have in the bank 0.4 million in the bank. And who am I going to bench? I'm going to bench the keeper Steele. I'm going to bench Amati. I'm going to bench Simicas. And most probably I'm going to bench Dewsbury Hall. So that leaves the team of the keeper to be Dubravka, the defender to be Telles, Shaw, and Cancelo. In terms of midfield, it will be Maddison, Martinelli, Son, and Fernandes. And strikers will be Kane, Wood, and Ronaldo. So this is the first free hit draft that I have here. I mean, I actually have a lot, but I think I narrow down to these 2. So this is the first one. So any thoughts?
First couple of questions for you.
Yep.
Why Maddison and not Barnes?
I think Maddison, in terms of minutes, I mean, it all could change after the PSV game, but I think in terms of minutes and in terms of involvement, Maddison is more involved in the attack as compared to Barnes, and also in terms of minutes as well. I think Maddison taking those set pieces, it's also a huge plus as compared to Barnes. So I think Maddison, on his good days, he's the one pulling the strings in this Leicester team in terms of attack.
Yeah, it's basically if you back him to play both games, because he'll definitely start tonight, as will Barnes. So then he would have started the midweek, this game. And then so when you're going into the deadline, you already know he's played the last 2. Then are you backing him with minutes against Barnes is the question. And I'm not trying to change your mind. It's just something that people will need to think about. Also, people who will not be on a free hit will probably look at a Leicester mid. Maybe like me, I have a Rafinha, and I can use that slot for a Leicester mid. And I'm debating, because I agree with you that I think Maddison is probably the better shout if he gets the equal amount of minutes. But you keep going into this loop of who is he going to prioritize? Who is he going to rest? Because Brendan Rodgers is like completely like, it's basically a poor man's Pep roulette, right? Because it rotates as much, but the team is not so good. So
exactly.
So it's basically, who are you backing? So, okay, that's on the Leicester mid. I see you've gone for Martinelli in this draft. Is that a budget reason? It's over Saka, or do you want to cover the Arsenal attack in any way?
I mean, I have actually Saka in my team, but I dropped him to Martinelli due to budget reasons for this team. I mean, if I could afford Saka, it would definitely be Saka over Martinelli. But I think Martinelli, he should offer both. I mean, he should start both games, or at least feature in both games. Due to some of the injuries that is happening in the Arsenal team. But I think Zaka playing at left back, it's sort of hampers Martinelli's output as well on the left, because I think Zaka, he's not a left back. he's not a left wing as well, so sort of affects Martinelli's attack. Yeah. So I mean, I basically I put Martinelli in because firstly budget reasons and also to cover for Arsenal's attack. But just to be fair to Martinelli, he actually got a really close. I mean, he got a goal that is really marginally called as offside after 5 to 6 minutes of VAR.
Yeah.
So he does have that potential to return. As long as
it's classic. It's classic FPL. The healthy rivalry between me and Sonaldo. He has Odegaard. I have Martinelli. Martinelli is like electric every game, shot after shot. Odegaard gets one shot and he scores. That's typical. No, but I think I like Martinelli as well. So I'm going to ask you, why is Salah not in any free hit draft? Is it because of the budget, or I mean, the guy scored a hat-trick against United in Gameweek 9, right?
I mean, but budget is also one of them because, to be honest, I didn't. I think he's also one of the players that. I mean, it's just a risk-taking move. I feel as a free hitter to take out the most owned player. Just to go for something differential on the free hit. But dropping Salah for Fernandes frees up substantial funds for me to go for other big hitters as well that you probably wouldn't go normally on your normal team. So I think budget reason is also the first one, and yeah, he scored against Man United on the reverse fixture, but maybe I don't know. I also got a feeling that I'll be punished by Salah. I just hopes that the rest of my team can make up for the loss. So yeah.
What do you think, Andy? Do you support this whole Salah out on free hits?
Yeah, I do. There's just no way you can fit him in. Unless because
you go Kane, you don't go. In fact, Baker's on the chat now.
Oh, I guess
he
Kane,
did he did an excellent thread on the fact that when they play against certain teams, those are Son games versus Kane games. I definitely urge people to check it out. And so he thinks the Brighton game is a Son game. So why not Salah instead of Kane?
Yeah. I mean, that's fair, but you kind of want to stack up on the midfield options, but I guess you could take away Dewsbury Hall, obviously.
Yeah, and Dewsbury Hall is getting popular because he got a couple of returns. The thing is, he's on an underlying stats basis, he's no Maddison or Barnes, right? I mean, he's just a cheap enabler.
I didn't know he
should be starting.
I didn't know he existed until the last game. So. Yeah.
Oh, really? He scored. Remember the game in which he assisted Lookman, and there were all these memes of Lookman, Dewsbury Hall.
Right.
Even the last game, that meme came up again.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't even remember that meme, so he's just been not on my radar. But yeah, that's FPL, right? We kind of.
I mean, fair point, Pras. I think if the Brighton game is a Sun game, and I would probably drop Kane, let's say, to enabler for a bench fodder kind of player, and I could try to push Dewsbury Hall up to Salah again. That could be something I can consider as well.
Yeah.
Depending on my budget, I guess.
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go ahead.
Just while we're on Son and Kane and Baker's excellent thread, I just want to say this. If you look at the last two games, Spurs got an early goal in the last game, and then the previous game they got a goal, I think 40-something minute against, I guess it was Newcastle, right? And under Nuno, they had a goal difference of -7, and under Conte, they have a goal difference of +26, I believe. So basically, at like they're plus 19 right now in the league, and way ahead of Arsenal, I think, who's plus 10 on goal difference. And if you kind of look at the last where they score, and they've been scoring in bunches quite a bit too, right, recently. So it's good that Spurs are scoring a lot. A lot of these goals are happening in the second half. And what that tells me is this is a counter-attacking Conte team, right? And they wear the teams down, they wear the opponents down, they make them tired, but they get punches too, right? Loris had 7 saves in the first half, which is incredible and going under the radar as well. And so my worry is this. This only works because you have a player like Son, who's actually this clinical. This only works because you have a player like Kane, who can create from literally amazing creation from out of nowhere. Like his second goal, he looked behind, saw Son run and make it. This only works because you have Kulusevski, who's a third viable Spurs option that they haven't had in a while. Way different level to Lucas Moura. So now this frees up Son and Kane. And this team is really, really solid. I think my only worry is that if they don't break down the team early on, or at least before the first half, it's going to be tough for them to score a bunch like they just did in the last few games. So, yeah.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, they have created a lot of chances. I think they're top for big chances created over the last 6 by a margin. Who are you losing? So Baker makes a very good point. Let's say you're not on a free hit and you want to get a United attacker. You can either go Salah to Bruno, or you can go Kane to Ronaldo. Because I think there's general consensus that those are probably the 2 best captaincy options this week, if you were to back the Norwich fixture and then hope for something in the Liverpool fixture. So I think I'm on the Kane to Ronaldo more than the Salah to Bruno. And I'll tell you why. Of course, on the Salah to Bruno, you free up some funds. So if you can do something with that extra money, maybe upgrade a Doherty to a James or a Cancelo, fine. Then that's the better move. But then that is not reversible so easily. You'll definitely want Salah back. So if you wanted to make it reversible, I think going Kane to a Ronaldo, captaining Ronaldo, and then in 34 you have the option. You can go back to Kane, or you can go up to KDB. So basically, who do you want as your 2 players, as your 2 big hitters? For me, no matter what combination, it definitely includes a Salah because of his game week 36. If you're free hitting in 36, maybe you can say, okay, I go without Salah now for the rest of the season. I know these are very macro points, but you need to think about all this in relation to who you're taking out if you were to take one out. It's equally fine to not go for any Man United asset and keep your Kane and your Salahs. But if you were to think about it, I think that's the direction I would think in. Maybe go Kane to Ronaldo and then have the optionality of going Ronaldo back to Kane or Ronaldo to KDB to change the structure a little bit.
Nice. And let's get to your second team, because the Salah question comes into play in your second team because you have KDB instead of Salah, I guess. So, can you read out your team, Zhou, for the listeners, please?
I mean, just to talk about my first team, I actually tried on the background to try to do Kane to a Fodder and then Dewsbury Hall to Salah. I couldn't afford it. So yeah, Salah is really expensive. So anyway, on to the second team. So the second team, same goalkeepers, Dubravka and Steele. And on defense, I have Cedric, Shaw, Amati, Shimikas, and Cancelo. On the midfield, I have Dewsbury Hall, Maddison, Fernandez, Son, and Kevin De Bruyne. And the striker role, I have Ronaldo, Wood, and Adams. So this is the second team. I'm most probably going to play Dubravka as a keeper. In terms of defense, Cancelo, Shaw, and most probably Cedric. And on in terms of midfield, Maddison, Fernandez, Son, and Kevin De Bruyne. And strikers, 3 strikers, Ronaldo, Wood, and Adams. So this is the second one. So it's basically, do I want Kane more or De Bruyne more? But I think, listening to Pras just now mentioning about the City team is going to play in the FA Cup first before their single game week. Sort of sways me away from De Bruyne, because I think there are a lot of of rumors or people's opinions thinking, De Bruyne might be benched or might be rested in the game against Brighton. So so it sort of puts me in the spot, to be honest. And I'm not really confident in having Cedric as my starting defender, if that makes sense. But other than that, looks pretty solid, this team. Especially, I like the Adams pick as well, at the striker role.
Yeah, me too.
I also like your left draft better, simply because I think Kane is slightly better than KDB only this week. Whether that's true for going forward or not is a different case. Whether that's true for Gameweek 36 double is a different thing.
Yep.
But yeah, like you mentioned, it's a Liverpool semi-final. There's no way KDB doesn't play, and he's been playing. He played on the midweek, the week before.
Yep.
I think he'll still start. But how much are you backing him versus a 90-minute Kane against Brighton? It's the same fixture. I think you go for a Kane on a free hit.
Yeah. I have to agree with you, because I think because De Bruyne, so many minutes involved in his tank, and in terms of expected minutes, definitely Kane gets much more than KDB.
Yeah. I mean, of course, they can't take it lightly as well, right? The title race is exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that Liverpool result, I saw, Sonaldo, you tweeted as well, that Liverpool City result was perfect for FPL, right? I mean, it was exactly what we wanted, because they all still keep league as the priority. All the key players continue to play, so I think he'll still play. But
yeah, I mean, like City midfield, they have so much quality. So, and Pep, I think even if KDB rests for one game, I believe Pep can still whip out a great team.
Yeah. And Brighton is a game which needs energy. So you just never know. I mean, obviously, the other thing is if you're backing a Spurs, they've just had a week's rest. Even Arsenal has had a week's rest. Man United's had a week's rest. City, not the case. So that's one. And the only last thing I wanted to ask is any thoughts on James? So a lot of people obviously have been burnt, myself included, by James. But the thinking is he's played 120 minutes last night. So clearly fitness is okay. I mean, if it wasn't, he wouldn't have played all this while. Although I understand it's a it's an important quarterfinal of a Champions League. So he obviously played. But there could be a school of thought that he now rests in the FA Cup semi-final because he can't play so many minutes consecutively. And then indeed he plays the midweek against Arsenal at home, and he plays on the side where Arsenal are really struggling. They don't have a left back. Reece James obviously loves to bomb forward. What's your thinking there? Is there somebody you can punt on?
Yeah, but if I have to punt on James, it will be in the place of Cancelo. So it's in between whether Cancelo or James. And if you look at the teams they are facing as well, one is against Arsenal, one is against Brighton. I tend to sway to the team that's playing against Brighton. So that's
fair.
Yeah, that's where my thinking comes in. And I think in terms of expected minutes, I think we can agree that Cancelo's probably higher than James.
I would go for Cancelo and James. I don't know if it's on a free hit or not, but I see both of those as having tremendous upside. But with James, it's always, will he get a start? I mean, people who had James in the midweek were just watching the 6-0 thinking how many points would he have got if he was playing.
And he just and he came in for just that 1 point. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
I think someone
Baker's.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to answer. Baker's asking, would you start James over Tony, Kulichevsky, or Broha, Weghorst? We will come to my bus team. I've got James on the bench, actually, first bench, because I don't know. Chelsea have not got anything to play for now in terms of trophies. So you may never know that he starts James and then rests him in the midweek. It's just something, if you have other better players, and Kulusevski certainly fits in that bracket. The doubler in Broha probably fits in that bracket. I'd probably play them over James.
Okay, I think we've covered your free hit teams, Zhou.
Looks good.
Any last words?
I think after this session and after this chat, I'm more swayed, towards having Kane instead of KDB, because KDB's minutes is really a concern. Yep. So currently probably leaning towards the first one.
KDB 20-pointer incoming.
Well, okay, I'm gonna tease one other draft out of you, Joe.
Yep.
If you downgraded Kane to a doubler like Adams, we saw Adams has great stats, right?
Yep.
And that's a big downgrade. Then you have a lot of money flowing around to upgrade maybe a Leicester mid to a Sancho, or maybe a Tellers to another big hitter defender like Trent. I mean, why not? Is that something you'd consider in terms of using the money from Kane to spread out in the team and making the defense better, even if it means more singlers? Or Martinelli to a Saka, for example, that you are looking to, that is a sacrifice that you've made.
Yeah, I mean, I could do that. It could be worth considering, because I think Leicester, they don't really have something to play for in the Premier League. So I think FPL Olympian, he posted on Twitter that he might consider not going for Leicester at all. Yep. Because firstly, rotations are happening and they played so many minutes. So it might be something worth considering as well. Definitely. Okay. So let's say if I downgrade Kane to Adams, then maybe Maddison I can go for. I mean, Martinelli I definitely can go for Saka. And Maddison, I'm not sure who else I can go for.
I mean, I would go Sancho and Tellers up to second City, or Reguilon, or some other defenders that actually have expected points more than 5 than some of the other double game weekers. So essentially I'm saying, why have a singler as your attacker rather than have a singler as a defender, because there's no good doublers. It's one to think about. We don't need to discuss now, but it's basically, as people discuss drafts, sometimes we try to jam in so many premiums because premiums have a high ceiling, but it is at the expense of the rest of the team. And when you're on a free hit, removing that temptation and spreading the money could be better as well. So it's just something to think about.
Yep. Okay. Definitely.
Yeah, I'll just add one food for thought here is I really think if you have an opportunity to consider getting Sancho in somehow, especially like when I looked at that second draft, I was thinking instead of KDB, you could put Sancho in there and then have triple up on United and sort of find other areas to improve. I think you should consider him as well on top of Bruno and Ronaldo, because I think Norwich game is where he has a chance to do very, very well, and it's going under the radar somewhat.
Yep.
Okay, so this one is it's a tricky one, but I think I just put this question up there so we can have a discussion on it. A lot of managers, including myself, are also considering a bench boost in 33. Part of it is game strategy, right? Because as someone who has other chips as well, it just makes sense to get rid of it now and then focus on streamlining a wildcard 34 or free hit 36, so it can be much more clarified and clarity. And there's other situations where someone has just a free hit left, or bench boost and free hit left, or just a bench boost wildcard, who knows, right? So a lot of it is down to game strategy. But I also, in my situation, looked at a bench boost in 36 and bench boost in 33. And right now my bench, most bench boosters this week will have guys like Livramento, Broja, Weghorst, Forster, who, just iffy players, right? But if you look at 36, it's the same thing. It's like kind of iffy players for that bench boost as well. So, yeah, I just kind of put this up there, open-ended question. I guess the question is, how do we make sure a bench boost is worth it for this game week?
Look, I'll say a couple of things on the bench boost for this week. Number one, there's a risk in this game week's bench boost simply because there's a lot of singlers in the team. So a lot of people have, the Cities and the Spurs and maybe even a Chelsea. And the risk is that they don't show up in the midweek. And basically what that means is your bench boost is already in the mud if one or two of your players are auto-subbing. This cannot happen in 36, or it's very unlikely to happen because your 11 is all going to play twice. So sometimes we focus on the bench, but we forget that actually you don't want any auto subs in that week as well. So people, for example, who bench boosted in 28 and 29, even though they bench boosted with a lot of single game week players, their 11 were mostly doublers. So therefore, they were not going to get auto subs at all. I mean, in case like mine, Dean got COVID and it was close, but he did eventually play the second game. So that's number one, that if you're bench boosting in a 36, you have that advantage that you pretty much not have somebody come on, like Cancelo, right? A lot of people have Cancelo. He's played last week, he's played midweek, he's going to play the FA Cup semi-final against Liverpool. Is it completely unfathomable that he misses out against Brighton? I don't think so. Ake could play left back. He's done a good job. So you're taking that risk on the 33 bench boost. Number two, if you have a wild card already and you can pair it up, you probably won't be taking hits leading up to 33 compared to 36. Sorry, you will be taking hits leading up to 33 compared to 36, where you'll probably be well set up and you're not taking any hits. So what you're saying is, if let's say you're taking a -4, you're already giving up 4 bench boost points just because you want that bench to be at that level so that you can bench boost. So this is the cons of bench boosting in 33. The pros of bench boosting in 33 is you can basically get it out of the way. And a lot of people with bench boost talk about getting it out of the way because you don't want to carry that team value for the rest of the season. And what that means is, if you're, let's say, in your position, Sonaldo, a wildcard having Son, Bruno, Son, KDB, and Salah cannot be possible if you have a bench boost left hanging that you have to solve for. But it is probably possible if you've got your bench boost out of the way. So having that ability to get it out of the way makes a big difference, and it makes a big difference for the rest of the season. So for me, that is value enough. And ultimately then, last but not least, the most obvious point is, how does the bench look in each of the game weeks? People fixate too much on 2 games. Sometimes having 2 bad games is worse than having 1 good single game. So I repeat, I think a Mateta in 36 is probably better than a Weghorst in 33, because Mateta in a single game week could do better than the Weghorst of game week 33. So these are some of the factors that I would think about for people who are looking at it. I think if you're in a decent enough position to dead end to wildcard in 34 and getting bench boost out of the way, I would still say do it.
Yeah, I think I think it was the second or third point you made about taking hits to improve your bench boost. Just on that note, the counter to that is, I believe in the hits that I'm taking to remove the players that are not playing. For example, I'll be removing Ramsey, who's blanking, for a double game weeker. So I think in isolation, it's the bench boost. The bench remains the same for me. Granted, I could play one of the bench guys into my starting lineup and not take hits. I understand that, but
that's the thing. You're taking the hit to get the bench boost, right?
Right.
Otherwise, you wouldn't play Ramsey.
But in isolation, I believe that because I'm dead ending to this game week, Ramsey to for example, Maddison is more than viable and more than hit worthy if he does play both games.
Sure. But what I'm trying to say is, don't compare. The hit may be worth it, because Maddison may get 7 points versus Ramsey getting 2 points. So you will cover 5 points plus -4 for the hit, and you get +1. But what I'm trying to say is, your comparison isn't that do I play Maddison over Ramsey? You're only forced to play Maddison over Ramsey because you're bench boosting this week. If you weren't bench boosting this week, your comparison has to be, would I need to take that hit for Mateta, who I would already have on a wild card? So I wouldn't be taking a hit at all and playing a single game week instead.
So another counter to this is the fact that in my situation, and I don't want to talk about my situation too much, but as someone who has 3 chips, the value of losing this chip now for taking a risk in this bench boost with the hits, I think is more valuable than actually trying to figure out a way to use all 3 chips from 34 onwards, which is why I'm sort of pushing myself to sort of figure out a way to get this bench boost out of the way, basically.
Yeah. No, I think it's fair enough. every chip strategy is dependent on individual teams. A lot of teams are so far away from a 33. What I was trying to say is don't be taking -12s to bench boost, because then your bench boost will look nice as 22 points. But you have to deduct the 12 points that you took to make the bench boost. So are you happy with a 10-point bench boost? Maybe not. That's the point.
Fair. Okay. A couple weeks ago, I also mentioned that sort of a numerical value to put on a bench boost is 4 times 6. So 24 points would be a very, very good bench boost, according to some averages we did throughout the season. So I think that's a good numerical value to keep in mind. Can your player return 6 points from your 4 bench players? When it comes to the bench boost, it really comes down to 2 things: buying good players or buying the fixtures. So yeah, it's tough. I think a lot of times you plan for a great bench boost and you lead up to it, and you think of Burnley and Everton the last few game weeks where plenty can go wrong after even planning for a bench boost. So sometimes you really this is why a lot of people don't like this chip, right? You have to get lucky in many ways.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, should we move on, Pras?
Yeah, I think we've already talked about the players. So for that matrix that we had for defenders, goalkeepers, midfielders, and strikers, I think those cover the cheaper assets as well. So people who are considering a bench boost, I think there's enough cheap options this week to go for it. And there's enough cheap keepers that if you have already, I mean, a lot of people are on Ramsdale and Dubravka, for example, already. Go for it. So I think to summarize, I would say this is true for any week. If your team looks good for the bench boost, this isn't the season to have this perfect bench boost, or it doesn't have to be that perfect strategy, because it's just not fitting, because the strikers aren't there. So just when your team looks good and you think you're ready, just go for it.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to the bus teams. Obviously, Zhou is on free hit, so he doesn't have a bus team. But looks like we have you up first, Pras, and James first on the bench. So read out the team for the listeners, please.
Sure. So I have Ramsdale starting in goal, who has the double. I have Cancelo. I have Trent and Robertson both starting against Man United, who have the single. In midfield at the moment, I have Salah with the single. I have Martinelli and Saka with the doubles. I have Rafinha here, and I'll talk about what that slot will become in a second. I have the mighty Weghorst. I have Broha, and I have Kane. So I'm very happy with the singlers, but I'm conscious that I don't have enough doublers. So the singlers obviously being the 3 Liverpool guys, Cancelo, Kane. I think I'm fine. I mean, these guys I expect to score equal points to anybody else in that price bracket. Of course, if Bruno and Ronaldo go mad, then it is what it is. Then the question is, what can I do with the Rafinha spot who's blanking? I can either just bench him for James, because that's then another single game weeker who I think is fine. And I've also got Kulusevski on the bench, who again has a good single game week. So in absent anything I do, I think this team is fine. And I have 2 free transfers. There's a few routes that I'm considering. Number 1, I could just simply go Sa to a 3.9 goalkeeper and keep the options for next week on doing something. I'd then in that case play Kulusevski or James. That's the passive option where I don't do anything and I just back my single game weekers in game week 33. The second option to set up for the future is basically I go Sa to 3.9 goalkeeper and Rafinha to a Leicester mid. And that Leicester mid basically gives me the additional doubler this week. And then I could carry that Leicester mid for the rest of the season because they have a double in 36 or 37. The other way is I could go straight to Foden. I have enough money to go Sa to 3.9, Rafinha to Foden. I could just bypass Maddison and just do Foden directly. And then the last option is the more maverick one, is basically if Man United get a double-double, then I have enough money to go Salah to Bruno and Rafinha to Sancho and Sa to a 3.9 goalkeeper. So basically it would be a hit and it would be a double United defense. And then the week later, I could go Doherty up to Rudiger. And that would basically be me having double United, double Chelsea for that double in 34. I don't want to do that. So I'm sort of hoping that there's no announcement before the deadline because I don't want to ruin the structure by selling Salah and then getting Salah back. So I'm hoping that I don't have to do that. Most likely, I'll probably do, if we have no new information, I'll probably do Rafinha and Sa to a 3.9 and a Maddison or a Foden. I have to still just debate that, depending on how Leicester look on Thursday. So very complicated. I don't know what I'm doing is basically the summary.
Joe, please go ahead and comment on Pras' strategy.
I mean, to be honest, your last option looks really exciting.
Man United one?
Yeah, the double Man United one.
It's when you share your dilemmas, the ones which basically can completely smash your team. The thing is, it look fine this week, but next week when Man United blank against Norwich and don't do anything against Liverpool, and I'm staring at Bruno and Sancho in my team, that won't look so nice then. But I don't think I'll do that, to be honest. It's just something that I'm thinking. If it's a double, then you got to think of alternatives, and that's one alternative I've thought of.
I mean, like, why would you go for Foden? Is it because City have great fixtures up to the end of the season, and should Foden really start each and every game? You think?
Look, I think if I was to draw a top three players from City, it would be Cancelo, De Bruyne, and Foden still. So I'm basically getting ahead of people. City play Watford, I think, in Gameweek 34.
Yep.
And that's the time when
they
people will be thinking about.
They love playing against Watford.
Yeah. And if I have Foden in my team, I think this team is then ready for Gameweek 36 as well. I don't need to take a free hit. I may, but I don't need to. So that would be the thinking. And I would just be ahead of others in terms of having a City mid. Oh, by the way, this Foden could be Havertz as well. So if they do get a double, if Chelsea get a double, then he could be Havertz. So it's just in terms of structure, I don't want to change it too much. I think I like Foden in there. I'm secretly also looking to do, if I don't free it in 36, doing Kane to KDB. So I don't want to use up all my City slots. Foden, KDB, and Cancelo would be the three City that I want in 36, and that's how I would fund it.
Wow. Captaincy, set on anybody?
Saka for now. And he's just the only guy I have who has the double. I think I'll still back him, even though he has Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea have been leaking goals. It's not that they haven't looked as convincing. So I'm not that afraid of the Chelsea game. I am afraid of Arsenal not looking so good. But look, they've had a week's rest, so I think they'll come back. They would have thought about what structure works best, absent Partey and Tierney. So I'm backing them to do all right.
Nice.
Yeah, and also at the same time, I think Chelsea they have too many games, two more games compared to Arsenal over the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, should we go to my team, Pras?
Yep.
Okay, Joe. Your advice appreciated. Okay, so I have Ramsdale in goal. Robertson, Doherty, Cancelo, Telles, Son, Salah, Saka, Odegaard, Ramsey, Kane up top. And my bench would be De Gea, Weghorst, Livramento, Broja. I am pretty much set on bench boost this week, unless my mind changes in the next 2 days. So I've thought of a couple different things. I mean, I've thought of many different things. But what I've come to narrow down on is that I'm willing to take a -8. And the -8 would be Salah to Bruno, and Bruno would be my captain, which is a big factor here. Ramsey to Maddison. Again, Maddison could change depending on minutes and what we see. And Doherty to a Newcastle defender and target. So what happens then is, I just quickly did it, is this would be kind of what my bench boost would look like. And, you might ask me, like, why are you putting these doublers on the bench? But if you actually look at this team, like, this would be my starting 11, I think, likely. So this is where I'm at with a -8. And I would be free hit, wildcarding out of it in 34. Yeah. So, yeah. ready to take the abuse coming my way.
I think it's fine. I think it's by taking a -8, you're reducing the see Broha, Livramento, Weghorst. It's not the best, but they're all doubling. Yeah. De Gea is very good, so De Gea and Ramsdale are, they themselves make it worth it. I can't believe you've been carrying De Gea still, but now that you have him, it's fine. I mean, I think this is easily a 20 plus bench boost, but remove the 8 points, so it's a 15-point bench boost, which is okay. I think that's good. And then in your 11, you're covering Son and Kane, which is basically on most free hits. You've got Bruno, which is on most free hits. Saka is on most free hits. Maddison is on free hits. A Newcastle Defender is on free hits. Cancelo is on. A Tellers and Ramsdale is on. So I think absent playing a free hit, you've covered about 8 players that most free hits have, and you're playing the bench boost. My argument is still, if you didn't take a -8, you would still have a close to free hit team. So these two things should be separate. Looking at your 11 versus looking at your bench boost. You could still take a -4, make your 11 look as close to a free hit as possible, and then wildcard out of it. So you have to think about these two decisions in isolation. Don't just think my team looks so great in 11, so I'll just use the bench boost. I think those are mixing two different concepts.
No, of course. I think I need to be clear on that. I'm 100% with you, Pras. I'm not forcing this bench boost because this bench, this starting 11 or bench boost looks pretty at all. It's not that. It's more I've thought about the long-term game plan, and this is like a, what do you call it, butterfly effect? Like, this helps me really upside chase from 34 onwards in my head, at least from what I've planned. And one of the things is this, right? I know there's, people, as you mentioned too, is you don't compare a triple captain to a bench boost. You compare your triple captaincy to the triple captaincy for our other managers from a different game week. Same thing with bench boost. I compare my bench boost this week to, for example, I think both of you guys had a great bench boost in, I think maybe 28 or 29, right?
I think my bench boost was pretty subpar, but yeah. Okay.
But for me, I've actually kind of dropped that thinking. And the reason is because of what my goals and not expectation, but my goals for this season is. And my goals for this season is to break into the top 10K. And maybe this is a little bit flawed thinking, but in order for me to really, I'm struggling to break into this top 10K, right? And now I believe this is my time to sort of, rise up a little bit. But I just think that I'm okay with this -8 because I'll still most likely do well compared to the field, at least in front of me, through a bench boost. And then I can really try to chase with the wildcard and free hit 36 moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think basically why you want to play your bench boost this week mainly is just to get rid of it. Then you can focus on, more budget on your starting 11. Yeah. Rather than having some funds tied in the bench. So I think it's a valid strategy because you really want to focus on the end game. So by having as much funds as possible in the starting 11, and then you can just plan towards Gameweek 38 with a very light bench, which isn't, I don't see a problem in that. So it really, like what Pras mentioned, if you're gonna wildcard regardless on Game Week 34, I personally I would also get rid of my bench boost this week.
I mean, here's what you should do. I recommend anyone who's got bench boost, free hits, wildcard, make your bench boost like Andy's done, and get like an expected points on what I'm expecting to get in the bench, and then make 2 drafts of your wildcard. Make a draft of your wildcard without a bench boost left and a draft with the bench boost left. And then project what your bench would look like in Game Week 36, and then see what is the upside from that. What also do you lose in your Game Week 35, 36, 37, 38 in your 11 by having that bench boost hanging on your head? And if that answer, obviously we're trying to project points, it's not exact science, but that's exactly the exercise you need to do to see is it really that much of a sacrifice if you had the bench boost left with 4 game weeks left? Because it's not that your bench in game week 34 wildcard is going to be 3.9, 4.4, 4.4, 4.4. It's probably you will still have some bench options because there are doubles coming in 37 that you'll want to build for. So you need to do this exercise, make 2 drafts for your wildcard 34, and then compare. To your point, Andy, fine, you can have goals, but your competition is yourself and your bench boost now versus your bench boost in 36. Nobody else, no matter what people got on their bench boost in 28 or 29, because from now until game week 38, you have to get a certain amount of points. Can you get more of those points in 33 versus 36? That's the only thing you should be thinking. Okay. And by the way, we also talked about in the last stream, game week 37 bench boost. We talked about how there's many cheap options. So now maybe I need 3 drafts from you in terms of your wildcard. One is a wildcard without bench boost. One is a wildcard with bench boost in 36, free hit in 37. One is a wildcard in 34 with a bench boost in 37 and a free hit in 36. See if you can really get that upside in 37 bench boost. Then I can tell you if this bench boost makes sense or not.
Yeah, I am going to do those. I did a little bit of those exercises, but again, Pras, like the issue with simply saying that you should compare my free hit 33 versus free hit bench boost 33 to bench boost 37 is the effects it has again from that from the practice of making a couple wildcards with including those 2 chips is the effects it has on the rest of the weeks, where I think that the payoff in the rest of the weeks will be bigger if I just get rid of it now and just commit to this bench boost right now. So the clarity is just
maybe that's
easier.
The case.
Yeah, but certainly I'm not set in stone yet, so much to ponder in the next few days. So yeah, another hour 56 minutes with FPL Zhou. So next time you guys see Zhou is appearing, just make sure you have 2 hours of your precious lives to listen to us 3. And thank you so much for listening and tuning in. We really appreciate your support. If you could hit the like button, that would be fantastic. So thank you very much. Last words from Pras and Zhou, and then we'll close it today.
No last words from me. Good luck, everyone. It's a tricky game week, so accept the variance and be happy with what you have in your team.
Yep. For me, I think those who are on free hit, just like me, let's just do our best and try to keep it as exciting as possible.
Nice. Okay. Have a great day, guys. Bye.
Bye.